Welcome to the Global News podcast from the BBC. I'm Silly Hatton, and today I'm joined by our global analyst, Ambarasan Etarajan. Saudi Arabia, Turkey and Pakistan have signed a mutual defence pact, described by some as NATO for the Islamic world. So Ambarasan, just briefly, what does this agreement entail?
The Mecca Joint Defence Agreement is important both in terms of substance as well as symbolism. Now, in terms of substance, it brings together three countries with the different military and financial capacities coming together. In terms of symbolism, it was signed in the holy city of Mecca. Now, what it talks about is military cooperation between Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan. And the various leaders have been giving out information on what areas like logistics, military training and sharing of intelligence, and also counter-terrorism operations. But the key thing is, it's like the Article 5 of NATO, that is, any attack on one country will be treated as an attack on all. That is what gained a lot of traction. And what many people see this as a substitute or a backup plan. Instead of having US as the net security guarantor in the Middle East, now these three countries are trying together and form a plan B in case of any future conflict in the Middle East. That's how it is being seen. Of course, there are many people who disagree with that.
Some people might question this and say, well, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia already signed a mutual defense treaty last year. So why sign another one and bring Turkey into the mix? Why is this happening now?
The Pakistan-Saudi Arabia agreement is something similar, which was signed last year. Now, what the Pakistani Foreign Minister Ishaq Dar was talking about, it was more of an expansion of what happened last year, the agreement between Pakistan and Saudi Arabia. Now, what it does is Turkey, a country which has got very good defense industry, technology in terms of drones, loitering munitions, and shells and missiles. And Saudi is one of the largest suppliers of fuel, petroleum products to various countries with the financial muscle power. And then Pakistan, which has a big military and also the nuclear arsenal. So the three countries, in fact, Turkey is the second biggest military in NATO. So these three countries are coming together. Now, how do you see this? Is it a counter to Iran and Israel? Because Turkey is also having problem with Israel in the aftermath of Gaza. And what happened in the last few months, why the US could not completely gain a superiority over Iran. So whereas many countries like Saudi Arabia, Bahrain and Kuwait, many Gulf countries came under attack, and those attacks on oil installations, civilian facilities could not be stopped by the US military might. And that is why they think a plan B can provide them some security. And also looking at in the long-term interests, for example, Turkey's relations with Israel, we don't know how this is going to pan out in the future. And Saudi Arabia thinks that in the long run, 10 years down the line, how Iran will develop its military capabilities. Because even now, they're still able to fire back, hit back at many targets in the Gulf. That's why Saudi Arabia needs it. In fact, it is more of Saudi Arabia wanting security than the other two countries because it has got the financial muscle. It gives billions of dollars in terms of loan or parking the money in the Pakistani banks to stabilize the economy. At the same time, it also imports, for example, drones from Turkey. So it is using its financial muzzle as well as its strategic location. It has got long coast one side on the Gulf, on the other side on the Red Sea. So it is using its geographical location also to bring this new security architecture. But many would say it will take years, even if they want any type of military integration, something on the basis of NATO.
You've underlined the logic behind this pact, why each country has decided to buy into this agreement. But as you said, a lot of skepticism has been raised, many questioning how solid this pact can possibly be. We've already seen it be challenged. It was only signed a few days ago. And already, just in the last few days, we've seen the Iran-backed Houthis in Yemen. They've struck a Saudi oil refinery, and they've also targeted Saudi-backed forces in Yemen. So should we really expect Pakistan or Turkey to step in to defend Saudi Arabia just days after this agreement was first agreed to?
There are a lot of skepticism about this agreement. First and foremost, many experts agree that whether it can replace the United States as a net security guarantor, no. because not in the immediate future. And whether this agreement can be signed without the tacit approval of Washington, many people doubt that. But what it allows the US is to somewhat outsource some of the capacities to the regional blocs, something like this. Now, even if they want to integrate or if you want to exchange troops, it's not going to be easy, given that three different security apparatus, like Turkey has got NATO, already embedded with NATO. Pakistan has got a lot of Chinese equipment. So combining them is not going to be an easy task. Now, if it comes to whether attack on one will be treated as an attack on all. So even though despite the Saudi-Pakistan agreement, even though Pakistan provided troop support, some air defense mechanism in Saudi Arabia's war against the Houthi rebels, it did not give full-fledged help to Saudi Arabia. And second, if you see the Saudi was attacked by Iran, then Pakistan did not come in support of Saudi Arabia because Pakistan shares border with Iran. So there are technical issues. And in the long run, what happens if Turkey gets into conflict with Greece or with Israel? So people are really questioning how far it is going to be practical. But what it gives them is another kind of security architecture where they can help each other. They are sending out, that's why one of the leaders was talking about, it is more of collective deterrence. It is more for peace, not against any specific country. They won't insist on that. But there are practical issues. If you look at the number of US troops in the region, tens of thousands, number of bases in Qatar, in UAE, in Saudi Arabia, can they be replaced by these three countries? No, they can't be replaced. US with this military and economic might, it is going to be there. But this gives these countries an opportunity to tell the world, we are forming this because the Gulf, the economic possibilities and the oil is very important for their economies, for the Gulf countries. So they want to have a plan B and they want to expand it later on, maybe to Egypt, to Qatar. That's why many people call whether it could be a Muslim NATO, even though there is no suggestion in using the term, but they're looking at it as Muslim countries coming together.
Pakistan has played a really interesting role in the global community in the past few months. First, it's acting as a mediator in the conflict between the US and Iran, and it's really stepped up to the front in that. But at the same time, it's signing a defense agreement with Saudi Arabia and Turkey when Saudi Arabia has received some missile strikes from Iran. So how is it playing these two roles at the same time?
See, Pakistan wants to show that it is impactful, it will be useful, and a key strategic player because it has got a lot of interest in the Gulf region because it imports energy resources. And also, millions of Pakistanis work in Saudi Arabia and other countries from where they get about $10 billion in remittances. Now, if you see in the last 1 year how the Trump administration has gotten close to Pakistani authorities, that's very interesting. In fact, President Trump called Field Marshal Asim Munir as my favorite field marshal. He was using the Pakistani leaders to send messages to Iran. Now, why Pakistan? Because Pakistan shares border with Iran. These countries, they share a lot of relations. And at the same time, there is no other country which can deal directly with Iran in the Gulf region at the moment. But Pakistan also wants to show that it has got diplomatic, maneuverability to go and talk to Iran. But at the same time, it has got limitations. Now, by signing this agreement with Saudi Arabia, people are, as you say, questioning, you are signing an agreement which is in a way seen as a counter to Iran. So your participation as a mediator comes into question. But that's why these countries are repeatedly insisting, it is not against any particular country, this new alliance. But in the long run, if there is any tension, Pakistan's role will be questioned. But then again, how the Trump administration is going to use Pakistan once there is a deal with Iran. The US was criticizing Pakistan not long ago because of the presence of alleged militant groups and how Pakistan is treating these groups. And tomorrow, what happens if there is a border skirmish between Pakistan and Afghanistan? Where will Saudi Arabia stand? So these are the issues which Pakistan's role has become more interesting. And also, it is also playing this very, strategic diplomatic game that can turn anytime.
I wonder how other countries in the region are responding to the announcement of this pact. What about India, for example?
Pakistan and India, they are rivals. They fought wars, particularly over the disputed region of Kashmir. In fact, there was a conflict even in last year, May. I was in Delhi at that time when both sides were exchanging drones and missiles. So will Saudi Arabia and Turkey come to the aid of Pakistan if there is another conflict? That's a big question because they are geographically far away, whether systems can be integrated. But it raises questions for a country like India because now the dynamics is changing, the architecture changing, where Pakistan can get Saudi resources and also Turkish defense technology in terms of drones or missiles. That is going to have an impact on India's regional security. So already the Indian government's official response has been, we have taken note of it, we are studying this agreement. But a day before this agreement was signed, there was a top-level contact between Indian and Israeli officials to discuss about the West Asia situation. But of course, they would have had some information about this agreement was going to be signed. So in any future conflict, it's not only Turkey and Saudi Arabia. Already China is providing a lot of assistance to Pakistan in terms of military jets, in terms of sharing like Baidu, the satellite technology, surveillance capacity. So Pakistan's role is going to be keenly watched by India. And that's why people are talking about already India has got close ties with strategic and defense ties with Israel. And India also signed a framework for a defense agreement with the UAE, United Arab Emirates. So will it going to be another form of strategic cooperation between a different group of countries? But again, Washington is going to play an important role in any conflict between India and Pakistan as it happened even the last year. So, but it is a clear warning sign. It is a clear sign for India now where it will look up to, what it should be doing, because you're going to look at Pakistan with a different dynamics where they are going to technology what it was lacking before, and they're going to be integrating more and getting financial resources from Saudi Arabia. So it is causing concerns for other countries in the region, especially with the countries with which they are having the rivalry, for example, Turkey and Greece and Saudi and Iran. So it is having an impact along not only in the Gulf, but also across the region.
Thanks, Ambarasan. Our global analyst, Ambarasan Attarajan. And if you want to hear more from the Global News Podcast, click the link below. I'm Celia Hatton. Thanks for watching.